Got pregnant without having sex, my boyfriend doesn't believe me, called me a cheater, and now I'm losing everything. I'm a 16-year-old girl, and I've been with my boyfriend, who's also 16, for a couple of years now. We're both virgins, not just by technicality, but genuinely. Sex has never really appealed to me, and from everything he's shared, he feels the same way. That being said, after this long together, we haven't remained completely innocent. I won't go into all the details, but let's just say things stopped around third base. Everything changed a couple of days ago. I've been feeling really sick for a while, so I went to the doctor on my own because both my parents were at work. They did a urine test and a finger prick, and then the doctor told me I was pregnant. At first, I actually laughed. I thought she was joking, like that was even possible for me. But no, she was dead serious. Suddenly she started talking about ultrasounds, prenatal vitamins, the whole routine, but I had to interrupt her. I told her it wasn't possible, I hadn't had sex, so I couldn't be pregnant. That's when she explained, in this clinical, detached way, that in very rare cases, women can get pregnant from intercourse because of, well, the way our bodies work. I was so stunned that I just sort of froze and ended up leaving without any more answers. I drove straight to my boyfriend's house. I hadn't called or texted. Nothing could have prepared him, but frankly, nothing could have prepared me either. I was a complete mess, crying and barely able to get the words out. And the last thing on my mind was that he'd think I'd cheated. It just didn't occur to me. I explained everything, told him how we'd never technically gone all the way, but we had gotten close and things like this. Apparently, can happen. At first, he seemed stunned, like he couldn't process what I was saying. I had to spell it out. I'm pregnant. That's when he lost it. He just couldn't understand how this could possibly happen if we'd never actually had sex. I tried desperately to explain myself, to assure him I'd never betray him or lie. I even told him I'd take a DNA test if he needed me to. But he didn't believe a word of it. I could see how hurt he was. The last thing he said to me was, I really trusted you, and I could see he was on the verge of tears. Then he told me to leave, and now I'm blocked on everything. I can't call or text to explain, and I feel so lost and helpless. If he wants to break up, that's his choice and I get it. I'd respect his decision. But the thought of him believing I cheated is just destroying me. He must feel awful, and I just want him to know the truth. I've never been with anyone else, not ever. He hasn't told anyone about the pregnancy yet, thank God, but he has told people I cheated on him. Now I'm losing friends, and everything is unraveling fast. This was the lowest, most miserable point in my life already, but now it's getting even worse. I've basically locked myself away in my room. I feel so alone, so depressed. All I want is for him to know the truth, that I never, ever betrayed him. Update 1. First off, I want to clear up a few misconceptions and explain some key points I didn't express well at first. My boyfriend never yelled at me or called me names. Yes, he was angry, you could see it, but our conversation was brief and he was mostly silent, which is just the type of person he is. We've rarely argued before, and when he's mad, he just shuts down. I'm not saying that's ideal, but I get it. This was a completely new and overwhelming situation for both of us. He also never went around spreading rumors about me. That's important. He confided in his best friend, who then told another close friend, and we all know how gossip spreads from there. A handful of our mutual friends, those closer to him or ones who knew him first, cut me off, and I won't pretend it didn't hurt. But honestly, if I thought someone cheated on my friend, I'd cut them off immediately too. I think it's easy to forget how emotional and immature things are at 16, the intensity is real. And I should remind myself that I was making these decisions and feeling these things just days after it all started unraveling. The morning after everything blew up, he actually came to my house and apologized. He told me he'd spent the night reading and researching, and he felt guilty for accusing me like that. He even admitted that he still wasn't sure if he could trust me, but he wanted to be by my side and help me through it because, more than anything, we've been best friends since we were tiny kids. Together, we went to my parents and explained the situation, that I wasn't sure if it was pregnancy or some other illness and that I needed more tests. They looked disappointed that I hadn't told them I was sexually active, but my mom said she was more disappointed in herself for not teaching me more about reproductive health. They're doing their best to be supportive, and for that, I'm thankful. After that, Monday came and I headed to the doctor for more blood tests. I really wanted to share something then, but I had to wait for the results, which just came in today. Unfortunately, after a full blood panel, everything still points to pregnancy. I'd let myself get hopeful reading all those comments suggesting it could be something else, but now my doctor tells me the odds of it being a real pregnancy are actually higher than a false positive. Apparently, false positives are much more common in men with certain cancers, not someone like me. I don't know if he was speaking from experience or just statistics, but here I am, waiting for an ultrasound this Thursday, the earliest appointment they had. That's the only way to confirm for sure. If the ultrasound confirms I'm pregnant, I'm planning to ask about DNA testing for paternity, just to be sure. And one thing I need to say, I've lied before, who hasn't? But pregnancy is not and will never be something I'd lie about. There are too many women out there longing for kids who can't have them. Faking something so painfully real for others would feel wrong in every possible way. I do get why so many people think all this sounds fishy or like a cover-up for cheating. I understand, and honestly, I'm not here to win over doubters because your opinions can't affect me now. But trust me, this account is a total throwaway, nobody I know could find it, and I haven't told anyone else except my boyfriend and my parents. If I were really trying to convince people, I'd use my main account, which everyone follows. This isn't about public image, and I very much want it to stay that way. On a brighter note, I need to thank everyone who has sent supportive messages and comments. They meant so much to me, more than I expected. Some people even offered to help pay for paternity tests, abortion access, all kinds of things, and every time I read one of those, I started to cry. I never knew there were so many kind-hearted strangers out there, and even if my parents and I have it covered, the offers themselves mean the world to me. I'm truly, deeply grateful. For now, that's where things are, and I promise to keep things updated when I can. Edit/update. Since I couldn't post a second update, here's what happened next. There honestly isn't much to add. At the ultrasound, my pregnancy was confirmed. I'd been clinging to hope that maybe it was something else, but nope. My doctor gave me a referral for a prenatal paternity test right on the spot, which almost never happens that quick. I went from the ultrasound straight to the blood lab with my boyfriend for a blood test and saliva swab, and now we just wait about a week for results. I'm almost certain I'll be getting an abortion, but right now I'm just figuring out how to make that as safe as possible, even if that means going out of state. Update 2. The only scenario where things could have gone catastrophically wrong would have been if it had turned into an assault situation, which, thankfully, was extremely unlikely. Still, I'm incredibly grateful that nothing traumatic happened to me while I was sleeping, something a few people had warned me could happen in these situations. We ended up finding an incredible program, thanks to suggestions. It's called Plan C. They help women in no-abortion states by providing abortion pills. The process of going through with everything was incredibly tough on me, mentally. Just this morning, the pills finally arrived and we went through a telehealth consult with a doctor to help guide us. At this point, I can say I've officially had an abortion. Woohoo, I guess. I was so conflicted, and honestly, I'm still not feeling great. Emotionally, it's rough, but deep down, I know it was the right decision for me. There are some things I want to clarify because people seem to have a lot of questions. No, I'm not a bot. I'm not old, either. I write well because I want to be an author someday. Writing has fascinated me since elementary school, and I work hard at it every day. Last year, I took AP Lang and this year I'm taking AP Lit, so English is definitely a strong suit for me. Clearly, my sex ed knowledge wasn't up to the same standard, though, something I'm still laughing at myself about. I think a lot of people really underestimate how articulate and thoughtful teens can be. We're not as clueless as everyone assumes. As for the paternity test, I got one simply because I could, and I felt it was necessary for my peace of mind. Some people thought it was strange to bother since I was almost certainly going through with the abortion, but for me, it was important and honestly not nearly as expensive as I thought it would be. My parents actually covered that for me. My boyfriend's parents never found out about any of this, and we definitely want to keep it that way. Their home life isn't stable, and my boyfriend pretty much plans on cutting contact as soon as he turns 18. Oh, and both of us are 17 now. This journey has been rough, but the support I've received has meant the world to me. I'm still receiving messages from people offering help, financial and emotional, and I genuinely find it amazing. Thank you to everyone who's reached out, supported, or just listened. It's made a huge difference. Update 3. I promised I'd come back one last time once everything's settled, and I've been sitting on this for a bit so I could write it with a clear brain instead of adrenaline. First, the two biggest questions. The paternity test came back. He's the father. The report said probability of paternity 99% with a number that looked like a Wi-Fi password. We opened it together at my kitchen table. He read it first and made this strangled sound I've never heard from him before, like relief and regret, got stuck in his throat at the same time. He kept saying I'm sorry over and over, and I cried in that ugly hiccupy way I do when I'm trying not to. I'm physically okay after the abortion. It wasn't painless or neat. I had one really scary bleed on day 2, enough that my mom drove me to urgent care in her slippers. They checked me out, gave me a shot for nausea and something for pain, watched me for a while, and sent me home with iron tablets and a follow-up plan. HCG has been trending down just like they want. I'm still getting a weekly blood draw until it's back to 0. I'm tired, but okay. What changed after the test? He did something I didn't ask for but needed. He took responsibility with our friends. He texted the group chat where everything imploded and wrote a long message. He's not a long message person, so that alone stunned people, saying he'd been wrong, that he panicked, that the test confirmed it was his, and that talking about me like I cheated was unfair. He asked them to stop repeating it. 2 people apologized directly. One sent me a meme and then a real apology. A couple stayed silent. One guy doubled down and said something like it still sounds fake, which would have wrecked me a month ago, but now just didn't. Not everyone knows how to admit they're wrong at 16. Some of them are going to need more time. I'm not waiting for them. We also wrote it out for ourselves in an unromantic, practical way. We sat in my driveway in the car with the vents blowing stale winter air and made a list on his notes app of what we would have needed to do if we'd stayed pregnant. Legal stuff, doctor stuff, money stuff. It started as a way to prove to ourselves that we made the right choice. It ended as something else, a quiet reality check. We stared at words like insurance and prenatal leave and childcare and night feedings until the fantasy part of what if shrank down into something small and manageable instead of this giant balloon pressing on my lungs. Closure, the weird kind. The night after the test result, we went to our little creek spot behind the baseball fields with a shoebox. Inside were 2 letters, one from him, one from me, a tiny crocheted star my neighbor made me years ago that I've kept in a drawer, and a printout of the test page. No ceremony, no candles. We dug a shallow hole with a trowel from my mom's gardening bucket and put the box in the ground. It sounds dramatic typed out like this, but it wasn't. It was quiet and practical. We both needed to do something with our hands and our feelings at the same time. When we were done, we just sat there on the damp grass and looked at the water until we were cold. Real-world stuff that might help someone else. The Plan C team followed up. They did exactly what they said they would do and didn't vanish after the package arrived. They sent clear instructions, warning signs to watch for, and real-time support messages when I panicked because I thought I was bleeding wrong. They asked for feedback and consent to include an anonymized version of my timeline in their internal training. I said yes. Our school nurse is a superhero disguised as a woman with a jangly lanyard. I asked her if there were any resources for students who don't want to announce their lives to their parents or pastors, and she handed me a literal binder labeled off-the-record resources. It's a list of clinics, rides, helplines, legal status by state, and no judgment providers. She said she started it after seeing too many girls come in with UTIs and fear because they thought asking about their bodies was scandalous. I told her about Plan C. She added it. I had a real visit with an actual OB/GYN, not a rushed urgent care situation. She walked me through what pregnant without sex actually means physiologically. No miracles, no clickbait biology, just anatomy. It was blunt and somehow comforting. She also gave me options for going forward. I decided to start birth control, not because my plans have changed, but because I want my future self to have more buffers than my past self did. It's my call. My mom came with me and stayed quiet and let me talk. That was its own kind of healing. Therapy. I'm seeing the school counselor weekly for now. We're not dissecting every detail. We're working on how to breathe when an intrusive thought drop kicks you out of homeroom. He got a separate counselor through a community center. We both needed a place where the other person's face wasn't falling apart while we talked. School and the mess I started to ignore. I wrote an anonymous piece for the school paper about comprehensive sex ed and the difference between don't do it and if you ever do anything, here's what your body is capable of. I didn't include my story. The health teacher, who is younger than my mom and wears clogs with socks like a camp counselor, reached out to the editors and asked if I would help her plan a voluntary after-school Ask Anything night with a local clinician. We did it last Thursday. We expected maybe 15 kids. Over 100 came. They sat on the floor, they asked questions in the anonymous Google form like is pulling out real or just a meme and what if your church says birth control makes you bad, and for 2 hours, it felt like what school is supposed to feel like, useful. The part I didn't expect was the pushback. A parent emailed the principal about promoting sin, and another emailed to thank them for finally teaching something my daughter could use before college. The principal tried to straddle the fence and asked that future events be content reviewed. The health teacher said okay, but then asked for a committee with 2 students, 2 parents, and a medical professional to do the reviewing. It feels like the grown-up version of sneaking past the hallway monitor. It's a compromise that still moves things forward. I signed up with my very boring legal name and no one blinked. People, his best friend, the one he told first, who told someone else, came to my locker and did this awkward apology where he stared at his shoes and kept saying, I was just trying to be there for him. I believe him. He also admitted he didn't know pregnancy was possible without what everyone calls going all the way and thought I was making up a loophole. He said he hates that our school's health unit was one pamphlet and a plastic banana. He asked if he could come to the next Q&A night. I said yes. One girl who cut me off wrote me a long DM. Her older sister had a baby at 19. She said my story made her think about the ways they all talk around things in their house, and she doesn't want to keep doing that. It was raw and honest and not performative. I cried in the bathroom between 3rd and 4th period reading it. My mom told my grandma. I asked her not to, then realized don't tell your mother is not a thing you can realistically ask your own mother when she needs support too. My grandma sent me a card with a pressed violet inside and wrote, I did not have the words at your age. You do. I am proud. I put it in the shoebox in the ground in my head. Us, as in him and me, we're not together in the way people want updates to say. We are also not apart. We decided on a boundary that I'm proud of us for keeping. No physical stuff at all for a while, and we don't use each other as emotional life rafts at midnight. We still watch movies together in my living room with my sister loudly clattering around in the kitchen to kill the romance if she senses it. We still share Spotify playlists. We still sit in the same booth at the diner. He still texts me bad photos of his cat. He is being respectful and steady in a way that makes me feel more like me. He is also making plans. Real ones. He got a job stocking at the hardware store on weekends. He opened a savings account with my dad standing behind him and nodding like a proud coach. He's talking to our school's college counselor about trade programs. He told me, without drama, that when he turns 18 he's going to make the changes he's been hinting at with his family. I told him I want him alive and okay more than I want him to be the person who fixes every broken thing around him. He said okay. The doctor who started this all, someone asked if I complained about the first doctor. I didn't file a complaint. I did, however, email her after everything and told her, in a careful, non-accusatory way, that the way she broke the news felt like getting hit with a textbook and that the sentence about rare cases landed like a myth. I also told her I'm grateful she took me seriously enough to order tests right away. She wrote back. She apologized for her delivery and told me she lost sleep thinking she'd mishandled it. She said she's going to start using a handout she made for positive test, patient in shock, so she doesn't rely on her memory in the moment. I printed the email and stuck it in my notebook because it reminded me grown up screw up and then try to do better. 2. What I'm taking with me, the internet can be terrifying and kind at the same time. I saved some of your messages in a folder called People Are Good. When my brain tries to tell me the world is mostly bad, I open it. Practicality is love. The people who quietly bought pads when we ran out, who handed me a water bottle without telling me to hydrate, who drove me to labs on their lunch break, that's love. I am not a liar and I don't need to contort my story to make it palatable. It was simple and messy. Both things can be true at once. We built something at school that I hope keeps going after we graduate, the Q&A nights, the binder, the committee. I want the sophomores behind me to have a faster runway to correct information than I did. What happens now? I'm applying for a teen writing fellowship our city library runs in the summer. My submission is a short story about a girl who finds out a giant truth in a tiny room with ugly light. If I get it, I'll spend Saturdays in a drafty room with other nerds and a teacher who loves commas too much. If I don't, I'll still be writing. That, more than anything, has been the rope I pulled on to get out of the well. I'm also taking my foot off the gas pedal socially for a minute. I don't want to be the main character of my friend group for the rest of the year. I want to be the person who shows up to game night and makes the best popcorn and goes home at a reasonable hour because she has an annotated bibliography due. This is the last update. Not because there isn't more to say, but because the next chapter is mostly boring on purpose. School, work, the relentless unglamorous maintenance of being a person. If you found this because you were Googling something scary at 2 a.m., I hope the part you take with you is that the world didn't end. It got complicated. And then, piece by piece, it got less complicated again. Thank you for being kind to a stranger on the internet. Wherever you are, I hope you have someone who will sit on cold grass with you when you need to bury a shoebox. Update 4. I meant it when I said I was done. I wanted to be boring on purpose. Then real life did that thing where it sticks its foot out just as you're finding your balance. A lot happened fast, and most of it is new, not a rehash, so here's the sequel I didn't plan to write. The curveball nobody saw coming. 2 Fridays after the Q&A night, his dad found a bank slip in the junk drawer. It was just one of those little paper stubs from when you deposit cash. He recognized the hardware store logo, did math he had no right to do, and asked why his 16-year-old, now 17, had secret money. It escalated. I won't detail his family's business, but it ended with him grabbing a duffel and walking out while his dad paced on the porch. He texted me, "I'm okay. Can I come over?" My dad answered the door with a face I've only seen a few times, calm with a layer of something fierce under it. We made a plan at the kitchen table. He could sleep in the guest room for 1 week. House rules, curfew, no closed doors when we're in the same room, chores, school first. My mom said, "This is a stopgap, not a solution. We'll help you find the solution." He nodded like someone being handed a life jacket and a clipboard at once. By Monday, the school counselor, bless the man and his collection of novelty socks, had him connected to a youth transitional housing program we didn't know existed. He moved into a supervised apartment with 3 other guys who all have their own stories and an in-unit washer he's already weirdly proud of. He has a keycard. There's a chore chart and a curfew that comes with a text check-in, but nobody yells. They helped him open his own checking account and set up direct deposit from the hardware store. He's taking it seriously. I'm taking a breath I didn't know I was holding. The school board circus you always hear about and never expect to be. And remember the after-school Q&A? Parents found out. Some were grateful. Some were not. Someone posted a blurry photo of a slide about contraception to a Facebook group with a me's caption about handing out sex kits to children. The principal forwarded us an email chain that read like a neighborhood listserv had a nervous breakdown. The board called a special meeting on health programming. Our health teacher, clogs with socks, still, the nurse, lanyard jangling like a tambourine, and 2 students were invited to present, me and a senior who wants to be a nurse. We divided it up. The nurse did stats. The health teacher did here's what the curriculum actually says. The senior did here's what students actually ask. I read a short piece I wrote called What We Don't Say, We Pay For, which was not a manifesto and not my story, just a list of things I wish someone had said out loud in 9th grade, like you don't get in trouble for asking a question about your body and there are more options than abstain/don't ask/don't tell. Then it was public comment time. A pastor spoke. A mom who had tears in her eyes but a kind voice said we were doing the work she wished she'd had when she was our age. A dad read from his phone like the words were a foreign language. A girl behind me squeezed my elbow twice, the universal signal for "you got this." My grandma stood up. I didn't know she was coming. She had on her Sunday coat and her church voice, steady as a metronome. She said, "I am 71 years old. When I was 17, my friend Sally bled in a bathtub because we didn't know where to go. I want my granddaughter to live in a world where information isn't contraband." She sat down like she hadn't just split the room open with one sentence. I put my forehead on my knees for a second so I wouldn't start sobbing. The board voted 4:3 to keep the Q&A nights as opt-in, with a content review committee made up of 2 students, 2 parents, 1 from the PTA and 1 from the parent group that disagrees, a clinician, and the teacher. They also approved a trial of something we proposed that I'm unreasonably proud of, the wellness pantry we built out of sticky notes and stubbornness. It lives in room 112 now. It looks like a regular metal supply cabinet from the outside because that's how we sold it to a principal who is allergic to controversy. Inside are pads and tampons, deodorant, soap, travel toothpastes, hair ties, a few bus passes for clinic appointments, a stack of clean socks, disposable heating pads, pregnancy tests, and a little box of condoms in brown paper lunch sacks labeled free. There's a QR code taped to the inside of the door that links to the off-the-record resources binder the nursemaid, which is now a shared drive because I figured out how to build it into a student-friendly site. We got a $500 microgrant from a local community foundation after I filled out an application with my legal name and my most formal sentences. The janitor, a quiet man with a key ring the size of a donut, installed a magnetic lock so the cabinet can be opened during nurse hours without broadcasting it to the whole hallway. A senior designed a logo that looks like a band-aid and a book hugging. We put up a very boring sign, hygiene station. We restock it every Thursday during lunch. It already looks like it's been there for years in the best way. The weirdest part has been how normal it is. People walk in, grab what they need, leave. No fuss. A freshman came in for toothpaste and asked if she could take 2 because her brother always steals hers. Yes. Take 2. A boy in a varsity jacket took a brown bag like it was a pack of index cards. He nodded at me like we were in on the same practical secret. We are. The way local media turned it into content and then moved on. A tiny local paper sent a reporter with a camera that looked like it was older than me. They wrote "Students spearhead wellness pantry after school board vote" and quoted the health teacher and a junior organizer, who asked to be anonymous. The photo is just our cabinet and the laminated sign. The comments were 70% fine, 20% weird, 10% predictable. A drive-time radio guy tried to stir it into kids these days, but nothing stuck because what's the scandal in a box of pads? Writing did the thing writing does. I got the email about the library fellowship at 6:23 a.m. on a Wednesday. It had confetti gifts and the phrase "we're thrilled to welcome you." I read it 3 times before I told anyone because I wanted to have the moment to myself. The short story I submitted is about 2 girls who steal back their own narrative from a rumor mill, and how quiet their victory is. I get to spend Saturdays in a drafty room with other people who also think too much about commas. If you think that sounds like church for me, you're not wrong. The fellowship comes with a $250 stipend and a mentor who is alarmingly kind about my overuse of M-dashes. On the first day, a girl from another school came up to me and said, "Are you the person who wrote the anonymous piece in your school paper?" I wanted to climb under my chair. She said, "My best friend printed it and put it in my locker. We started our own binder." I cried in a bathroom with fancier soap than our schools. Then I came back and read my work aloud without my voice shaking. Medicine and the part no one tells you about until it's you. My OB signed off on me at my last follow-up. HCG is down to 0. She switched me to a low-dose pill, and I set the alarm on my phone to a sound that doesn't make me jump. The only thing that surprised me was the explanation of benefits that came in the mail from urgent care. It coded my visit as incomplete miscarriage. My mom explained about billing and privacy and euphemisms that protect people in places where protection is thin. It felt like seeing a version of my story through frosted glass. I didn't correct it. I wrote about it later. We planted a tree where a shoebox used to be. A spring storm turned the creek into a brown rush and ate a chunk of bank where our shoebox was. We walked out on a Sunday with the sky doing that too blue after rain thing. There was no sign of the spot. It didn't gut me like I thought it might. We brought a sapling my neighbor propagated in a yogurt cup and planted it a few feet back from the edge. We didn't say anything ceremonial. He tamped down the dirt with his sneaker. I stuck the empty yogurt cup in my pocket. It felt like trading one kind of marker for another. Prom, which was somehow both normal and not. We went as part of a big group. I found a green dress at the thrift store that fit like it was meant to and then spent $12 getting someone's hem out and the straps shortened. He wore a suit he found on Facebook Marketplace for $40 and a tie my dad taught him how to tie twice. We did photos in someone's backyard with a brick wall and a dog that photobombed every single shot. We danced to the most ridiculous songs and the one slow one they always play because the DJ is contractually obligated to make at least 3 couples cry. We didn't kiss. We didn't test the boundary we set. We got waffles at the diner with a mountain of whipped cream and watched one of our friends cry laugh about her heel breaking like it was a Greek tragedy. He walked me to my door at 12:01, hands in pockets so he wouldn't reach for mine because we said we wouldn't for a while, and said, "Fun." I said, "Yeah." It was a lot and also wonderfully nothing. A few people I need to mention because they're part of this even if they don't know it: the janitor who looks the other way when a cluster of students walk into room 112 in the last 2 minutes of lunch and who installed a second hook for backpacks because he noticed people juggling things. The boy who doubled down in the group chat months ago. He showed up with his mom and a Costco-sized box of pads for the pantry and said, she said, to help. Progress looks like that more than like an apology monologue. The nurse, who added a section to the binder called what words they might use on your billing paperwork, and why, after I brought her my EOB and asked if it was lying or protecting. She said, sometimes it's both, and typed in complete miscarriage and dysfunctional uterine bleeding and post-procedure check on a list so kids wouldn't panic at words. The health teacher, who let the parent committee suggest a few edits to the Q&A slides and then quietly added more resources than they asked for because she is a Jedi master of saying yes and then doing the right thing anyway. Where he is, where I am, where we are, he's in the apartment. It has a couch that's seen better days and a cereal shelf with 4 boxes of the same brand because boys are a monolith sometimes. He's still at the hardware store on weekends and 2 weekdays after school. He applied to a pre-apprenticeship program in electrical that starts in the fall, and when he got the email that said conditional acceptance pending graduation, he sent me a screenshot with about 1,000 exclamation points, which is a bigger deal than it sounds because he is not an exclamation point person. We still keep our boundaries. We still hang out in public on purpose. We still watch movies at my house with my sister clattering pans on purpose if she senses we're drifting into something that feels like a scene. We talk about stupid stuff on purpose too, memes, his cat's obsession with Q-tips, the way the hardware store guy in all 9 says y'all like a lullaby. It turns out not being each other's midnight life raft doesn't mean not being each other's person. It just means we get to arrive at each other as whole as we can manage. The part where I accidentally did policy, the committee met twice and wrote a 1-page content review framework that sounds like grown-up homework but actually matters. It says, tangibly useful, non-judgmental, medically accurate, opt-in, anonymity respected. It includes a line about not platforming crisis pregnancy centers as medical providers, which caused a 5-minute detour into civility talk, and then got approved because the clinician explained, very calmly, what licensed means and what licensed doesn't mean. The second Q&A night had more parents than the first. They sat in the back and listened. A dad asked if there was a way to teach boys about boundaries without making them feel accused. The clinician said yes and then did a whole section on consent as a skill, not a slogan. After, 3 boys asked where they could volunteer. Plan C emailed me about a youth advisory call. I said yes and spent an hour on Zoom with people in little squares from 3 different time zones talking about how to make their website less like a medical pamphlet and more like a conversation. They sent me a $75 honorarium that I put toward witheringly practical things, a box of Pantene minis for the pantry, a stack of neutral color scrunchies, and 1 sketchbook because I'm still me. Minor miracles. In the middle of the week the principal stopped me in the hallway and said, I'm hearing fewer rumors and more questions. I can live with that. It's the closest thing to a compliment I think he can physically produce. The school paper ran a piece by a sophomore titled 5 Things I Wish Health Class Told Me Sooner, and it was useful and kind and funny. One of the 5 things was learn what a pharmacist can answer. They are like doctors in vests. The school pharmacist, yes, we have one, she's here 1 afternoon a week, printed it and taped it to her bulletin board. A freshman boy who has never made eye contact with me asked if he could take 2 brown bags because his friend is too embarrassed to walk in. Yes. Always. Take 2. The small, practical ways people held me up. My dad taught him how to file taxes. My mom sat with me while I called our insurance just to confirm what confidential means when you're on a family plan. The nurse sent me a link to a study about teens and health literacy because she knows I like to read math when my brain won't stop spinning. My English teacher slipped me a copy of a book about writing personal essays and said, be reckless on the page, not in life. My grandma mailed me a cutting from her violets and a note that said, we are so very alive. What isn't dramatic and somehow feels like the headline, I'm okay. He's okay. We are doing our homework and our laundry. The pantry is stocked. The committee has a Google Doc. The fellowship meets on Saturdays and we drink bad coffee and argue about semicolons. I have a little jar on my desk where I put the honorarium I get for advisory work and the $5 bill my grandpa slipped me with a wink, and the quarters I steal from under our couch cushions. When it adds up, I go to the dollar store and buy travel-size shampoos. Practicality is still love. I don't know if we'll ever be a capital C couple again. I do know that when he got his acceptance to the pre-apprenticeship, I yelled so loud the cat hid under the couch, and when I got mine to the fellowship, he hugged me like he remembered every draft I threw away. That feels like the important part. I'm not promising another update because every time I do, the universe treats it like a dare. But if you're reading this at 2 a.m. because you're scared and you found this thread and you're clicking through updates like life rafts, here's what I can offer right now. People will sit with you in fluorescent rooms and on cold grass and in chairs that squeak. You will learn the exact sound your own courage makes. It is smaller than you think and more persistent than you'd believe. And, bizarrely, there will be a cabinet in a public school somewhere with a boring sign and a quiet door that opens for you when you need it. That is a miracle I will allow myself to claim.